I just created a list of my own personal sort of 13 or 14 trade tools that can be used. But I want to talk about what I think are the 3 or 4 most important ones or most significant ones. I'm going to start with tariffs. So tariffs are those taxes that are imposed at the border when a good is imported. All goods have at some level the possibility of having some kind of a tariff put on them. And tariffs can be both a carrot and a stick. One of the things that many are thinking about is whether or not we should be lowering the tariffs on all of the goods that really go into decarbonization, whether that's tariffs on solar products or wind turbines or carbon capture and sequestration, smokestack devices, and other things. Because if we look around the world, what we're seeing right now is that the average tariff on renewable energy equipment is somewhere between 3 and 12%. So countries are already charging a relatively significant tariff on those things that would be the most helpful for them in order to engage in decarbonization. So clearly one tariff tool we could use is to lower the tariff barriers to trade in, if you will, green goods. And on the flip side, many countries are looking at, and in fact, the European Union and others have already enacted policies that will impose higher tariffs on the goods that have a lot of greenhouse gases contained in them. And again, this is really important. If you look at where are greenhouse gases emitted right now, 25% of all greenhouse gases in the world are embedded in traded goods. So even if a country does everything they should do and they've completely eliminated the creation of greenhouse gases in their own markets, their imports are going to have 25% of the world's greenhouse gases in them. And so in order to address that issue, countries are looking at putting on what are referred to as border adjustment measures, or in the European Union context, a carbon border adjustment mechanism that says, I'm going to impose a tariff on the amount of greenhouse gases that are included in that ton of steel, in that ton of fertilizer, in that good that has a lot of greenhouse gases in it. So tariffs are one key tool. A second one is subsidy. So again, subsidies are government support, government grants, government concessional loans, government tax breaks, government money that is going to support activities in a country. So again, you're seeing a huge increase in the amount of government subsidies that are going to invest in green technologies, research and development, innovation, the development of electric vehicles, the development of carbon capture and sequestration technologies, all kinds of things. In the United States, we just passed this Inflation Reduction Act, the single largest investment in climate change reduction measures ever by any country is all of this huge amount of subsidies that are now being pushed out in the U.S. economy to support everything from solar to wind to carbon capture and storage to electrical vehicles to batteries to critical minerals on. So huge amounts of subsidies being spent in order to try, again, to reduce greenhouse gases. And subsidies, just like tariffs, have a carrot and a stick. On the one hand, there are huge efforts to try to stop doing the subsidies that are contributing to climate change, which is all the subsidies for fossil fuel. Again, the world is currently granting massive amounts of subsidies for fossil fuel. And so you think, oh, that's really easy. We should use the trade tool, just get rid of those subsidies. But it's not as easy as it looks, because when you drill into it, 85% of the subsidies that are going to the fossil fuel industry are subsidies for consumers to bring down their price. So it's one thing to say, I'm not going to subsidize ExxonMobil anymore. It's another thing to tell that elderly woman that lives in a cold climate, I'm not going to provide you any help for your heating oil over the winter. You're just going to freeze because I'm going to stop subsidizing fossil fuel. So this issue of getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies is really important, but again, very tricky. So on the one hand, you have this kind of stick of banning, getting rid of, eliminating subsidies that support fossil fuels. On the carrot side, you have subsidies that would support the innovation, the research and development, and the creation of more green goods. So again, subsidies are one of the huge tools. Third big tool that we're looking at is government procurement. again, where the government is the one that is purchasing the goods. So if you look in the United States, just the federal government alone, $700 billion in government purchases. So if all of those purchases are of green goods, a requirement that the good can only have a small amount of greenhouse gases, that it has to be green steel or green aluminum or green cement, you've really moved the needle because now you've created a huge demand, a big market for green goods, which is then going to create all of the incentives for the cement companies, the steel companies, the fertilizer companies to actually create these green goods because they know there's going to be this very big demand for those green goods. So you're creating an incentive to do that. A fourth big tool that is often used is standard, where you can set a standard that applies in your market and in the markets around the world. In other words, I am going to say that we are not going to allow any goods to be sold on our market, whether they're domestically made or whether they're imported, unless they meet a certain standard in terms of the amount of greenhouse gases that are created in them.